Welcome back, everyone, to Web3 Unpacked. I'm Rich Pasqua, and joining us today is Marcos Viriato, CEO of Parfin, a modular platform for secure digital asset custody, tokenization, trading, and management. Welcome, Marcos.
Hello, Rich. Thank you for welcoming us here. We're very excited to talk about the different topics in crypto, tokenization, CBDCs, and so on.
Awesome. Yeah, we're excited to learn more about you, your company, and the world of crypto in general. We're going to dig into Parfin quite a bit today, but before we start, I always like to ask the question, how did you get started in your Web3 journey? What did it look like for you?
Well, back in the day, it was around 2014. I used to work in this investment bank, heading operations and technology globally. At a certain point with the hat of CTO. So, and I had to learn more about what was going on in technologies. And once I was in a conference in Las Vegas. It was one of the first AWS conferences with my head of technology from US. And the guy was a very geek, and he was like, you should buy this. This is going to be the money of the future. And he introduced me to Bitcoin. And I said, I don't know how to operate. And he sent me a link to download an app. It was an exchange called Poloniex at that time. And I swapped my credit card. I bought like $2,000 of Bitcoin. It was 600 each. It was like, and I sort of, wow, this is easy, huh? Everyone says complicated, etc. But he was using an app. But more importantly, he sent me the Satoshi white paper. And I remember flying back home. I read the paper. I said, oh my God, this is serious stuff. This is, a new financial system that could emerge, from the 2008 crisis. And then after that, I sort of fall in the rabbit hole, and I start, trading Bitcoin, and then this Litecoin came, and then Ethereum, and then I got all the movements, the ICO boom, and then the DeFi boom, NFTs, and now all that's happening to zero knowledge. When I left the bank in 2019, I took a sabbatical. I said, I need to jump in. After 20 plus years of traditional financial markets, I said, I will build something on the space. I need to be involved on what, at that time, as my view was going to transform the financial markets as we know, but it got much broader, right? It's transforming way people work with this whole Web3 and even corporates and companies. So it's quite exciting,
Yeah, and your journey is very similar to mine and others out there. Once you read that white paper and you really start to, suspend disbelief and understand that, wow, this could transform workforces, not just economies, but global economies and beyond. It's really exciting. And you do fall into that rabbit hole, which everyone says, right? Which is great. And we like to understand where people come from and what their journey's like. So thank you for that. Can you give us like a nice overview of Parfin and what tools you offer and really what it's doing?
Yeah. Well, back in the day, I was still in the bank. The bank decided to set up this crypto trading desk. It was a proprietary trading desk allocating dozens of millions of dollars. And my team, so I remember I was global head of operation technology, were controlling, the settlement and the opening the accounts at the exchange, and we're doing arbitrages and all sort of the trading strategies. And it was a nightmare to control because there was at the time, 17, 18, there was lack of institutional systems, lack of, really tools that you could rely on and operate in an institutional way. So that it was on the back of my mind. And then when I left the bank, I said, well, why not build something that would help institutional adoption of crypto and professional traders and asset managers and banks and so on. So we built our first product, which was a portfolio management embedded with the MPC custody which stands for multi-part computation for those who are not familiar with, which is secure. And then we right after the product was ready, we sold to a few clients. We had many relationships in the market, and surprisingly enough, we built the tool for more institutional, TradFi players that were entering into the space. But we sold a lot to crypto players, and we realized that even the crypto players, some of them didn't have enough, infrastructure or software to handle. And this portfolio management became then, part of a more, what we call today a digital assets platform, where we built then a crypto as a service, which is a brokerage system, very sophisticated, where neobanks, investment platforms can offer crypto to their end clients. So it's an end-to-end solution, and it can be any digital assets, from any crypto to any tokenized asset that the bank or an investment platform decides to sell or to tokenize, and we're talking about real world assets here. And then this becomes our flagship product. We've been selling this to big financial institutions, and especially in Latin America. We have 1 or 2 clients in the US now, and we realized last year or a year ago that also there are a lot of restrictions especially for banks to tokenize real world assets or financial instruments in public blockchains. And we saw the beginning of this permission networks or permission solutions, like Aave launched the Aave Arc. And then we decided to build our own permission EVM blockchain system to allow banks to be more efficient and scalable, keeping privacy into the ecosystem. And the combination of the two products are very powerful because you have the infrastructure, the layer 0 that allows them to tokenize and to bridge tokens even to all the public blockchains and to leverage what's going on the DeFi space. But then at the same time, when a bank wants to deal with their internal stuff like money market funds tokenization, or even the tokenized deposit, or any internal royalties, whatever, they are able to do without the necessary cost of going to a public blockchain, and again managing everything through the platform. So it's that's where we are now, and we started the journey around 4 years ago, and so far so good. This has been exciting. We've been growing this so-called crypto winter that started mid last year, and hopefully we're gonna go out of this to this end of the year. But for us was good. We kept increasing revenue. We kept growing number of clients despite of this sort of crypto winter.
Yeah, and I think the crypto winter is fastly turning into crypto, not even spring, summer, hopefully.
Yes.
And I know it's warm in Brazil where you are now, so that's par for the course. But you mentioned something in there, Marcos, that interests me. So your clients on your platform are now able to offer, if they are a specific financial client, right, dealing in trading or brokering assets, they're able to now offer cryptocurrencies to clients. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And most of those clients that are financial institutions are based in Brazil and outside US now. So because of the whole, as we all know, there's this, SEC and going after most of the crypto players, and so banks in the US wouldn't be allowed to offer crypto there in the class, not even services related to crypto. We know some banks that had to shut down their custody services out of US because of this regulatory enforcement. But outside, it's been a lot of good movements from regulators here in Latin America, especially Brazil, Chile, Colombia. So we're seeing they are very advanced into regulating virtual asset service providers. Europe as well. We just got the license with the Bank of Portugal as well, where we're going to offer services in Europe, inland Europe. So it's and the space is opening, more and more. And I think US will follow at certain point in the future.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I asked that question, because different countries, it's important for our viewers and listeners to understand it. Different countries have different regulations, different rules. And it looks like you guys are kind of softened up a little bit, and your clients are actually able to trade swiftly, which is kind of a nice, I wouldn't call it a backdoor, but a nice head start, if you will, to the whole environment. So that's great. Now, there's one other thing too. The idea of modularity. How does that fit into Parfin, the product?
Yeah, this was when we started. We at the beginning we used to call Parfin Legos because we could combine them in a way that would fit, any type of client. And we would even sell the pieces separately, the modularity. But more and more, the way we're seeing is, we're seeing the platform as a whole. We're selling the platform as a whole. The client uses the pieces that they wanted. The sort of the pricing mechanism is like a pay-as-you-go, similar to what Amazon does with their services. If they consume, they pay. There's obviously always a minimum fee, but the view is that we want to take any entry barrier for those clients that wants to experiment and use and offer services on the digital asset space. Remember, we generally don't offer the service ourselves. We are, most of the cases, we're technology providers. So they use our technology to then offer crypto services to their end clients.
I got you. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, accounting in general is generally kind of befuddles most people, whether it's TradFi or crypto. Crypto is exponentially more detailed. How do you, I've been digging in with accountants and other platforms and trying to understand just what it takes to kind of scour the network to understand what trades were made. How does that work? Because there's so many little pockets, and I know I'm like a small fry that will trade or flip or swap or do whatever I'm doing with digital assets. So I kind of have a handle on it a bit, but a lot of people out there are moving really fast, and their organizations are large. How do you actually, what technologies or tools are you using to kind of, ping the network and pull back the right information?
So our strategy to tackle this sort of accounting problem, and that's quite funny because people blockchain is a distributed ledger system, and people think that by consulting the blockchain directly, you would be able to generate accounting records, right? And blockchain is a transactional ledger. It's not a accounting ledger. That's one of the main differences that people generally confuses. What I mean by transaction, it records all the transactions and information is related to the transactions that are immutable, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to trading, buying and selling, not necessarily all those transactions are registered into the blockchain, especially when it comes to centralized exchange. So what we did in the platform, we brought all this information, trading, blockchain transfers or blockchain transfers, DeFi transactions into a single denominator, right? Why we did that? Because from there, we can generate the account postings to be posted into an accounting ledger, right? So what I mean, let's say you buy and sell in a platform A or in a DEX or in a centralized exchange B. So we bring those transactions to a common denominator in terms of information, granularity, and data format, where you can drive the accounting records and posts from there. Remember that when it comes to transactions that are on-chain transactions, and that's quite tricky. Some counterparties or some wallets or some custodians, they transfer, let's say you ask to transfer one Bitcoin and end up getting to the other side 0.999 something, because there is the gas fees for the network. But imagine that you're an accountant, you have to record that transaction. Well, you transfer an asset, it was one, it got at the other destination is 99. What happened? So what we do generally, we bring also those on-chain transactions into a common denominator where, we generate a transaction fee that can be generating a cost posting to the ledger. So relate to that transaction that's transferring an on-chain Bitcoin from A to B, you would have also a fee related to that. Otherwise, if we don't do that, it creates a lot of problems for you to reconcile because, again, different custodians or wallets treat transfers in different ways. For instance, there are custodians that say, okay, you transfer one Bitcoin, you need to pay outside the gas fee, so you're going to receive one Bitcoin at the end. There are custodians, especially on Ethereum, that uses gas stations and take, from a separate wallet the cost of transactions. So this all needs to be accounted in order for you to do a proper, accounting of your transactions. And again, institutional clients like banks, it's a must. It's not an option. They have to have it, especially when they deal with end clients.
Yeah, I'm guessing banks across the world, and we'll get into that a little bit more later, but across the world would have to be really, everything with crypto is under a microscope. So it has to be detailed. And it seems like you guys have figured out how to really simplify the idea of these transactions for the end user, which is really, really, really nice because it goes into, if you look at Satoshi's, it's broken into, I don't know how many parts, right? So it gets really detailed. It's a beautiful mathematical system. But it's very hard for people to even at the surface level to wrap their head around. So it's nice that you're kind of consolidating and creating focal points and simplification. So it's nice. Now, when it comes to assets, because you guys say you're also allowing people or clients to trade, right? Or buy and sell directly, almost like a DEX or an exchange. At that point, if they're using your system to do that, who has custodial rights over their assets? Do you hold those rights or does the end user hold them?
Yeah, we have we used to have as part of our MPC custody, we used to keep all the pieces of the private key with us. We call MPC key shares. And but now our new system, the client can hold one of them. So we therefore consider that they hold the custodial rights. But remember, we don't sell to individuals. We sell to, it's a B2B business. So we sell to financial institutions or trading firms or investment platforms. So they hold that. So therefore they can offer the custodial services themselves to their end clients. And there's an element of this because the platform connects to more than 20 liquidity providers, being exchanges and OTC desks. And when the trades are, and we have the concept of best execution, which looks after the best, not necessarily the best price, the best combination of price, the fees that you pay and commissions that you pay for the exchange. And then, let's say a client of our clients who is going to buy 10 Bitcoins, it's going to get executed on the best connected counterparties. So it needs to be pre-funded, the counterparties. And by that time, despite of the client, the custody is still with the liquidity provider. So we built a treasury management system where our clients can move coins on chain to their internal custody, and also we integrate external custodians. So it's a more complex system where you can effectively manage the whole life cycle of trades being executed in different counterparties, being transferred from counterparty A to custody, to internal custody, to external custody. So we have one of our clients has 3 million end users trading crypto every day.
Wow.
And
Wow.
there's the other day they reached like 400,000 transactions in a day, and basically imagine clients buying $10, $100, $1,000, $300,000 of crypto buying and selling, and in this being executed with the best price in 3-4 different exchanges. So then they consolidate, they settle, they move to the custody, they move to a cold custody. So it's a more I would say, when you offer crypto to a thing on a large scale like this, it would require a more sort of complex operational setup and processing as well. But we come from banks. This is sort of bread and butter for us. The only thing we try to apply the controls and views that the bank would require to run. It's a more complex. Crypto is very complex, by the way, right? You have an asset that trades in different exchanges and counterparties. You have the private key to handle. You have the transfer, the gas fees. So it's more complicated than traditional financial systems.
Yeah, you also have different exchanges across the world, different time zones. You have a lot of, and that's been exploited. We know that. Yeah. That's challenging and hyper detailed, like you're saying. The average Joe like myself is just doing tiny little things. I can't imagine on a grand scale with large amounts of assets or monies being, traded or transacted on. Amazing. Now, one of the biggest topics, obviously, in your world and in everyday world, we see it with the SEC. They can't make up their mind. What's an asset? What's a commodity? Whatever it is, right? So it's challenging just to keep up. With that said, regulations in the United States are tough, but they're tough all around the world. You know this firsthand. You come from the banking system. How do you and your team keep up with regulations and subsequently help your clients understand what's coming down the road or in front of them at the very moment?
Yeah, we started Parfin in 19 in London, right? And we're trying to understand as much as we could the FCA, regulatory view on crypto. There's a bit of issues at the beginning, but they try to first regulate crypto to avoid money laundering. So we would have to enforce KYC and anti-money laundering controls through crypto, which is especially when you're providing what they call off-ramp, where the client deposits the Bitcoin and wants to withdraw cash, right? Which was not our case because we were B2B, but still you had to enforce those controls. I think the first step where we tried to follow was, and again, coming from a financial institution, it's really easy to understand those requirements of anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing, and so on. So we implemented this as part of the system onboarding, etc., to help our clients to enforce that. So it was not difficult. What was difficult for us is to really have a clear guidance of what were our obligations, for instance, as far as custodian of crypto, or like you mentioned about custodial, non-custodial, right? Still not clear in many jurisdictions. If you, we use a technology called MPC, as I mentioned, we can have 3 nodes. We can give one out of 3 to our client, so he starts the signature of the transaction, and then we keep the other 2. Would we be considered a sub-custodian vis-a-vis the traditional financial markets regulation, because we are still holding 2 transactions? No, but I can be perceived as a technology only because my client signed initially the transaction and start the transfer. So there are still a lot of uncertainty about what would be the obligations and responsibilities of a custodian, being technology provider, being holding a part of the private key. So it's still, and again, if you add that for crypto is already, and then crypto being, some of them being classified as securities and not, because if you're a custodian of a security, you should be a qualified custodian vis-a-vis the financial market. So I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. The good part is that, just to finish, is like, you have like MiCA, the Marketing Crypto Assets Regulation in Europe, is clarifying those points, and I think that will help, the participants of the ecosystem and banks and who wants to join with more clarity about those, what would be configured as as a security or not security, what would be a substantial real world assets token, what would be a stable coin or electronic money, and so on. So would therefore fall into a new regulation, even for those assets, because again, being a custodian for a traditional security is one thing. Being a custodian for a tokenized security adds a little bit more of controls. But I think this is going to become clear, more and more in the coming months.
Yeah, that was great. And you brought something up interesting, Marcos, in that last bit. Multiple key holders, right? Or custodians, right? 2 or 3 on 3 different nodes, or literally 3 different entities holding 3 different sets of the keys. Like, who's responsible for that? That's really interesting. And you're seeing, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's really not figured out 100% just yet.
Not really. And no. I think again, if you look at the traditional financial markets regulation in some countries, you are vis-a-vis the client, you are the qualified custodian. But generally, when you look at the terms and conditions of your custody agreement with your client, if your bank or whatever is your qualified custodian, they say in a very tiny lines, they say, we could hire sub-custodian for specific purposes or parts of the assets that you hold with us. We're still liable. We still, vis-a-vis the end client, we're still responsible, but we could, rely on sub-custodians for this and this and that. And today, in the traditional financial markets, you never look at this, right? You're opening your account with this reputable, broker firm, and you don't really care if they have all. You obviously you rely that he's been approved by the local regulator, being SEC or whatever, or FINRA in the case of broker dealers in the West. But you ultimately saying, they have a license. But in some case, those players they use either sub-custodians or players for payment services and so on. And you don't care. You just seeing one brand in front of you. I think that will happen in the crypto ecosystem as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you ask specific people on different days, it's I just want to invest and I don't want to deal with anything, and that's why people go to brokerages or firms, right? And if you ask the crypto kids, they're like, nope, hands off. I'm full custody. I'll take all responsibility for it. Or they work with a third party, such as yourself, to share that responsibility. So really interesting. Now, I would say in the crypto world, I'm kind of fascinated with the way and the approach that Latin America is taking with cryptocurrencies, because it's sometimes very dramatic and sometimes, lackluster in some ways, much like the US. But there's much, to me, Latin America there's much more at stake, right? From a country's perspective, right? And Brazil's been doing a good job and kind of pushing forward steadily over many, many years. And it's important for people to understand that. But for our viewers and our listeners, can you just give us a little bit of Brazil's history, right? economic history. You don't have to unpack, the entire history, but more recent history. What's been happening with the, maybe a little politics that influence economics, and the reason why Brazil is kind of attaching itself to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and everything else.
Yeah, Brazilians in general, they've been very creative since the 80s. I remember when I was a teenager at the 80s, there was the hyperinflation in Brazil for 10 years. So you would go in the supermarket, and the next day the price was 30% up. It was not like a 1%, it was, it's like a hyperinflation. So people used to hold cash because cash was the king at the time. And if you had their money on the bank, you wouldn't buy anything. So it was a time where you had to protect your reserves. You had to find ways to really make your money worth something. And then after that, we had a tremendous devaluation of the Brazilian real. I remember the Brazilian real was pegged 1 to $1, and from one day to the other, it moved to 4 or 5. Oh. And imagine that if you had, all your reserves in Brazilian real, all of a sudden you were poor in dollars, And then, people started to realize, I have to hold dollars or any other currency which is more strong than Brazil, or at least manage this in a way. And when it comes to crypto, that in a sense brings all of this to you, right? And you have a sort of like a Bitcoin, I would see as a capital protection for part of your reserve, right? You invest there, you hold, and regardless of the currency, because you can sell it in pounds, you can sell it in Brazilian reais, but the Bitcoin is still there, right? And it doesn't depend on any monetary policy, and you own your assets like on the inflation as you had the cash. So I think people got used to it, but I think more than that is that Brazil has 200 million people, and everyone has a mobile. Everyone is connected to the internet. So it's a developing country, but very tech-driven, very enthusiastic about technology. And most of the population are Generation Z and Y, whatever you call it, and so they're more it's like open for innovation, for crypto, for techie things that happen. So I think this is sort of a perfect storm when it comes to Brazil, and we have a very pro innovation regulator. So the Central Bank of Brazil 3 years ago launched the famous PIX, which is an instantaneous payment. It's a super success. I pay you instantaneous. People say I PIX you. I PIX you. And it gets into account in seconds. If Rich, give me your PIX, I transfer instantaneously. It's in your wallet, and so that facilitates the adoption of innovation, of tech-driven innovation. So, and crypto was like that. So I think and even the central bank and the Securities Commission of Brazil, they are saying, now we're going to have the CBDC, and we want the market to have a clear framework for tokenized securities and non-tokenized securities, because they want to see this ecosystem boosting the economy and generating jobs, generating opportunities for people. I think this is that's why we call this perfect storm.
Yeah, and Marcos, you hit on a lot of things that I often kind of repeat over and over. Is I always say, watch Latin America, watch EMEA, the Asian markets, look at, and even developing nations, specifically developed nations, watch them, see what they're doing, and sometimes it's out of desperation, which I don't think, Brazil had as per your points, had a hard time with inflation, right? Making things almost impossible to transact on a normal human day-to-day level. So there's a good reason to do it. So I always say, watch Latin America, see what they're doing. And you're 100% right. I always loved the entrepreneurial and the kind of spirit that goes into it, because in Latin America, if they like it, they're going to really like it. And I can't wait to see what happens. And, hats off to you guys for really running with it. And it's a really cool thing to see. Now you brought up the central bank, coin, right? CBDC. That's been percolating here in the US for some time now and developing it. And I'm sure they're far along behind the scenes. What does that look like? And how are the, people of Brazil, are they going to embrace it? Are they going to, what's the sentiment there?
I think, again, I gave an example of the PIX, and Brazilians, they embraced PIX, the instantaneous payments, just to have an idea, the use of debit card in Brazil dropped by 60% after PIX.
Wow.
Imagine the amount of money that the acquirers lost, by losing this market share, to PIX. And this is massive. It's a Brazil process around, I would say $10 trillion of or payments a year. So it's quite a lot. It's 2.5 times GDP, just for a perspective. So it's a lot of, payment processing, and PIX increase the micropayments a lot. People send a PIX of $1 or $2, $3 used for pretty much everything. So I think this increased the unbanked to be banked. I think this is one of the main elements of this revolution, and I think the digital real will bring even more people to the ecosystem with better services, because I think the way we see it, and the central bank of Brazil governor is pro like this innovation. So last year the central bank started the sandbox for the CBDC, and they invited AV, which is a lending protocol, a DeFi lending protocol. Why they invite AV? Because they want to see people borrowing from a lending pool cheaper than they borrow from banks today. That's the innovation that the country wants to have.
Yeah.
And because if you buy a time deposit from bank, they will pay you, let's say US rates minus 10 beeps, whatever. And if they lend it out, they will lend at, US rates plus, 1%, 100 beeps. So there will be people that are willing to pay a little bit more and people to receive more in a decentralized fashion. So I think this could boost the economy in different ways, disintermediate the ecosystem. And the central bank is embraced to do that. And I think that's what, the tokenized, currency would allow. Like, for instance, you have a house, and let's imagine that the title of the house is tokenized, and you don't want to do a mortgage because it's too complex. You need to go for a credit approval, but there's a good lending value. You just need, your house worth like $500,000, and you just need like $20,000 for rent, whatever. You could lend it out into a lending pool, token up your house, and receive that $20,000. Once you have the money, you pay it back. Obviously, there's some required regulation. You need to, bulletproof the investors, but that's ultimately what can happen when you have the digitized version of the currency for a country. And again, I think Brazil is open to embrace those innovations, which is happening in the crypto ecosystem. Web3, the DeFi, that's happened, but what's being used to as a collateral? Bitcoin, either Bitcoin or Ethereum, and you borrow USDC. Right. So it's within the same ecosystem. But my view is that once you have the central bank digital currency, which is open to the public, you could potentially have services to disintermediate, to allow people to borrow money cheaper, to get the better financing rates and so on.
Yeah, Marcos, a lot of great points in there. And there's one thing that I echo all the time, right? And it's beautiful. Just backing up a little bit, it's beautiful to see that the Brazilian central bank is being a part of the growth and not a hindrance. So that's wonderful. Music to my ears and many others. But how, let's see, I often bring up Coinbase as an example, right? Brian Armstrong, he's very vocal. He's very straightforward, very clear about not only his company's position and mission, but he also offers to help. He goes to Washington to help to educate and work with governments, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And it's a really good thing, and it's important for people to understand that this is a communal type of thing, and if you want to be a part of it, great. You can't sit on the sidelines and complain. If you want to be part of the solution, let's work together. So that's wonderful to hear. Now, when it comes to central banks, CBDCs, and regulations, is Parfin active in working with the Central Bank of Brazil in helping to develop and educate and beyond?
Yeah, we've been always, as we come from financial markets, and we knew some people at the central bank, and actually the regulations around the world, and we had various opening conversations explaining how the crypto ecosystem works, what would be applicable to the traditional financial markets and not, how we see the evolution of securities tokens and so on. And more importantly, I think since the central bank started the development of the Brazilian CBDC, which is called DREX, DREX, DREX. It's a weird name, but we've been engaging with the central bank. Last year, the central bank started a proof of concept. It was a sandbox, selected 6 participants. One of them was a big bank, was Banco Santander, and Santander hired us, and we built the whole sandbox technology for them. And that was the beginning. Another thing, one of our clients is one of the largest independent broker dealers, not owned by banks in Brazil, and they entered into the sandbox of the Securities Commission and to tokenize that security, a corporate bond. And we provide the whole infrastructure, and we attended the various sessions with this client and the Securities Commission to discuss how we're implementing, how we're improving controls over the existing system. And more recently this year, we're very proud because the central bank, after the sandbox last year, started the pilot of the CBDC, which finishes in May next year. And the central bank selected 16 participants. We're among one of them to contribute to the tests and development of the CBDC. But more recently, and we're supporting other 4 banks into this infrastructure to interact with the CBDC. And more recently, we launched this permission EVM blockchain called Parfin, and we've been selected by the central bank directly as one of the solutions to support the privacy and scalability components of the CBDC itself as an infrastructure to the central bank directly. So we've been working with the technical teams since beginning of November, and we're super excited. We started now, after the discovery phase, we start the phase to test our solution to enforce privacy within the infrastructure, the blockchain infrastructure for the central bank. And I think that will bring the country to a next level in terms of having, a blockchain-based currency with privacy, where you could bring a lot of efficiency to the country as far as payments, as far as innovating into lending, borrowing, trading, new financial new ways to fund, small, mid-sized business through tokenization of the shares. So I think it's going to be very interesting. But first, even the central bank governor, Central Bank of Brazil governor said it's not about the digital currency, the digital real. It's about the opportunities it will bring to a tokenized economy. And I think this is very powerful, when we think about the what would be a tokenized economy.
No,
So
I concur. I think it's only going to be upside for Brazil and many other nations. Now the DREX is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marcos. DREX is supposed to launch 2024. Is that on track? Are you guys tracking well with that?
well, we're excited. We have been selected as one of the privacy solutions. The biggest problem we need to solve within the blockchain, as the central bank will run some nodes of the network, and they want financial institution to run nodes, so it creates resilience, not a full decentralization, but a sort of decentralization. But at the same time, when you run a node of the network, you can see all the transactions and so on. So you lose the most important element of both U.S. and Brazil constitution, which is your privacy, and basically that's the main big problem, that we have to really implement this in a decentralized way, where financial institutions could be part of the network to create resilience. And so we are testing and implementing our privacy solution, which involves a lot of cryptography. We are using homomorphic encryption and zero knowledge proofs, etc. We're very, very optimistic that we're going to reach the results. So the pilot, which contemplates putting the test together and getting the participants to test and enforce privacy, scalability, and interoperability. So the test finalized in May next year, May 24. And the goal is that if they are successful, and we hope they are, then there will be a rollout plan to have the first version in production by the end of 2024. I think it's an aggressive timeline, but if you sort of narrow down the scope of what would be the go live, which is government bonds being tokenized by the Treasury of Brazil and being bought and sold by clients of the banks, you narrow down. Then after that, you can roll out for a more inclusive payment system and so on. I think if you use for a specific purpose at the very beginning, I think the chances that we launch next year are very broad, because central bank digital currency systems, they have wholesale, retail. Some countries are testing more on the wholesale side versus the retail. Wholesale, I mean interbanking payments, not retail, individuals paying each other. Brazil has chosen the more complex setup, as far as you read on different publications around the world, which is having both the wholesale and the retail. But you can always, and the pilot has been testing both, but you always can go, okay, for the go live of first phase, you can start with the wholesale and then prepare the rollout for the retail a few months later. Even the PIX, the instantaneous payment, it allowed payment, on a retail basis, individual to individual, and then there was some, payment installments, payment, so cash against payment. So there are further phases that were developed in a sort of after. It was a phased out approach, and I think why not follow the same path with the DREX? I think that would be, that would allow this to be launched next year once we solve the privacy problem.
Yeah, I'm not a developer on the blockchain, but I do understand enough to say, take your time, be methodical, do it right, and the people will thank you afterwards. So kudos, and that's great. Keep pushing ahead, and like I said, we're going to be here in the States. We'll be tracking it, and with eyes wide open, and brains wide open too for learning. So that's great. Now there is, I know in the United States, there's huge demand for ETFs. And I know for a fact that in Brazil, there is pent up demand for an ETF, whether it be, Bitcoin probably to start, or Ethereum down the road. What's the sentiment there? What are your thoughts on that?
So Brazil was one of the first to launch the spot ETF. There is already 2, 3 asset managers offering it in the local markets.
Mhm.
And the way I saw it, I thought that the individuals would buy more of the spot ETFs, but surprisingly enough, there are more institutional investors that bought it. Pension funds and big wealth managers and allocators,
Yeah.
which was very interesting. Therefore, if you took the largest spot ETF in Brazil, it has around 300,000 individuals that bought it. Again, compared to US, the ETF market is very tiny, very, very tiny compared to US. We're talking about, I think the whole ETF market in Brazil is like if it's $500 billion is much, but in US are trillions and trillions of dollars, right? So I think that, for the crypto world and crypto ecosystem, that will be a tremendous opportunity for a bull run and to demystify this crypto, ecosystem and speculation, etc. So I think the technology came to stay. Blockchain technology came to stay, and the
Yeah.
crypto, as we call it, are tokens that represents an underlying technology, and therefore, as much people uses that technology, the token would gain value. Not for Bitcoin because it's more is the origin of everything, is more a reserve of value. But for the other protocols like Ethereum, you mentioned, I love the Ethereum. I think Ethereum is just the beginning of their usage as one of the main protocols going forward, and there are several applications that can run on top of the protocol. So I think this is just the beginning, but in order for the ecosystem to continue growing and being self-fulfilling in terms of funding, in terms of an spot ETF would help a lot, because this is something interesting in the ecosystem. Obviously, there is a lot of venture capital that invested into crypto companies or digital assets companies in the past, and again, the US is fabulous for this capital at risk allocation. But when you look at some of those protocols, they created the technology that generated the utility token that needs to be used to pay gas fees, but they also issue more tokens, and it's a self-fulfilling where the success protocols gain value, the token of those successful protocols gain value, and therefore it can self-finance the developments of the technology. And that's, to me, is a revolution where you have a technology that can somehow, self-financing the evolution of the ecosystem and the innovation
Yeah.
that's happening.
That's a great point, Marcos, because I see that all the time. They're through smart token allocations, whether it be pulling investors in or actually funding a development team through tokenization or ancillary kind of corporate or company-wide investments. It's fascinating. There's so many more doors opening up, and that's wonderful. And I think in general, you always look at these adoption curves of technology, whether it be, old world 2.0 technology or 3.0 technologies. It's only after the technology kind of disappears is when it really is mature, if you will. Right. And I think the idea of ETFs is helping to kind of take away the whole techno jargon world, and make it more palatable and approachable for everyday people. So I think it's a good thing. I would say to people, I would caution people, when looking into ETFs, because I am a fan for the most part, but I caution them who you buy through. You might not agree with that financial institution's, goals or ethics for that matter. So be careful. That's all I say. Not financial advice.
Yeah.
So one more fairly loaded question for you, Marcos. It's interesting. I've been bubbling this question up a little bit. Do you ever see, like, say, Bitcoin becoming the world's reserve currency?
I don't think so. I think it will be a reserve of value for some individuals, but to say that it will become a world reserve currency, I don't think it's going to happen unless you have central banks around the world, allocating part of their reserves into Bitcoin, but it's unlikely that to happen because you don't control the mining and the supply element of it. There's no also monetary policy control. So I think, again, I think it's unlikely that happen. But therefore, for individuals that want to protect part of their reserves in an uncorrelated asset, in my view, that could be a sort of a protection of the individual's reserve. Let's call it. Again, it's not an investment advisor here, but it's just the way people should look. If you really believe that it will gain value over time, there are risks as always in life, right? People say, there will be a quantum computing in one day and we'll break the cryptography of Bitcoin and people will steal all the Bitcoins, etc., etc. But let's see. I think by that time, there will be someone that will improve the code of Bitcoin and will become post-quantum, and therefore the problem is solved. So
yeah, very all good points, and super interesting to kind of ask that question because I lean more on your side, obviously, but certain assets will be protected or backed by Bitcoin, or a pegged version of Bitcoin, if you will. But who knows? You never know. Let's just figure out Web3 and transacting first before we worry about that. And, another topic that you brought up, which could be a completely, a whole series of podcasts and stories or, articles is, quantum computing, it fascinates me, scares the pants off of me. But at the end of the day, that much power takes a tremendous amount of energy right now, right? It's not like you're going to have a quantum computer in your pocket or built into your phone. It's going to be, over time in many, many years, not in the immediate future. My take is it'll be leased out. Now, how you lease it and who it's leased to is kind of an ethical question. And what it's used for, right? So I think we're a long ways off before cryptography is cracked. Can it be done tomorrow? Who knows? I have no idea. But I don't think the general population will have their hands on this anytime soon. So interesting. I'd love to dig into that more down the road at some point. But as we wrap up, Marcos, this has been fascinating and very educational for me and our listeners, and we thank you. Do you have any events coming up, or IRL or virtual events or conferences you're hosting or going to?
Yeah, we're there will be the Digital Asset Summit in March in London. I think it's a great event for the ecosystem. It's more institutional one. May next year, there will be a consensus in Austin, Texas. We're always, will be the third year that we're attending with our booths. So, and there are a few others, like last month, there's the Ethereum conference in Turkey, in Istanbul, and I heard great things about it. So there are many events. We're trying to go as much as we can, but as we're growing up the business, it's quite hard to be traveling all over. But the ones that we will be attending is most likely the one in March in London, Digital Summit, and then Consensus in Austin, Texas in June. There's this Bitcoin conference in Miami. It's becoming very popular as well. I don't recollect when it's going to be, but I think it's it's the beginning of the summer. So we can share again, and we're always doing some podcasts that we follow us on our LinkedIn and social media. So we have our addresses at Twitter and LinkedIn, so you can follow us there, and we're always coming. We're producing more and more some research reports talking about topics like CBDCs or tokenization of assets, stable coins, regulation, and so on. So feel free to share our social media, and then we're always sharing content and valuable information to our clients and to the ecosystem in general.
Excellent. And parfin.com, correct? And
yes.
We encourage our listeners and viewers to go check them out. It is, it's a different part of the world. They're moving faster in some ways than other portions of the world, which is very exciting. They're building, they're breaking, they're fixing, and they're just moving forward. So really interesting. And we thank you, Marcos, for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Rich, and your audience. I hope you guys like. And again, feel free to contact us if any further questions.
Excellent.
Thank you.